It's 7 p.m. Wednesday, August 28th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. Japan's second round of export curbs against South Korea takes effect. More than 1,000 items are now subject to tighter export controls from Japan.
South Korea expresses strong regret over Japan's trade curbs, but leaves the door open for a diplomatic solution. The Blue House reiterates that Seoul may reconsider its scrapping of a military intel sharing pact with Tokyo if Japan withdraws its trade restrictions.
Director General of Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau at Japan's Foreign Ministry, Kenji Kanasugi, is due in Seoul tomorrow for talks with his South Korean counterpart. We have the details.
And Korea's fertility rate falls to a new record low, adding to concerns over the country's already plunging birth rate. News Center begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Noadam.
And I'm Han-Dan. Thanks for joining us. We begin with Japan's removal of South Korea from its white list of trusted trading partners. Despite Korea's repeated calls for talks, Japan has officially downgraded Korea's trade status, which went into effect as of today.
With key materials now subject to tougher export screenings from the Japanese government, eyes are on how the move will affect Korean industries. Our Yoon Jung-min starts us off.
At the stroke of midnight on Wednesday, South Korea was removed from Japan's whitelist of trusted trading partners. According to the Korean Security Agency of Trade and Industry, over 1,100 items, including 857 non-sensitive items, are classified as strategic goods by Japan and will face tighter controls. Among the non-sensitive items are high-tech materials, electronics, machinery, computers, sensors, navigation equipment, and many other items often used for military purposes other than weaponry.
Korean companies that have been buying machineries from Japan will wish to keep using the same products because machinery such as inspection equipment is standardized for Japanese products.
Even for non-strategic goods, shipping to countries excluded from the list could require case-by-case approval if Japan thinks it necessary. In effect, industries across the board except for food and lumber could be affected at any time if Tokyo decides to implement a tighter screen. The Korean government is paying closer attention to 159 items in particular. Exporters in Japan have to get case-by-case approval from the government every 6 months for shipping to non-whitelist countries unless they follow Tokyo's internal compliance program. The approval may take about 90 days for non-whitelist countries, while it usually takes about a week for whitelist countries. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea has expressed deep regret over Japan's removal of South Korea off its white list of trading partners. The presidential office also stressed that while it's still possible to mend the two countries' relations, the ball is now in Japan's court. Our Shin Se-min at the Blue House.
South Korea deeply regrets Japan taking away its fast-track export status. Presidential Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Hyun-jong, standing before the press, called out Prime Minister Shinzo Abe by name and pointed out that it was Japan that decided to link security with trade controls.
Prime Minister Abe commented twice that Korea cannot be trusted, and he is treating us like an adversary. We want to point out once again that it was Japan that actually linked security issues with export restrictions in the first place.
He was referring to GSOMIA, a military information sharing agreement that South Korea decided last week to withdraw from in view of Japan's claim that Seoul cannot be trusted. And he responded to Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono's remark Tuesday that rewriting history is impossible.
In fact, it is actually Japan who is trying to rewrite history.
But he left a door open, saying it's now up to Tokyo to take actions that reverse the sharp deterioration of ties. And he echoed remarks from the South Korean Prime Minister a day ago that Seoul could reconsider quitting GSOMIA if Japan takes back its measures, saying the ball is now in Japan's court. There have been concerns that not renewing GSOMIA could create a rift with the U.S. Addressing those, a Blue House official said its remarks that Washington understands does not mean Washington agrees with Seoul's decision, but that it recognizes the situation Seoul is in. The official noted that soon after the end of GSOMIA was announced, Seoul's National Security Chief Chung Eui-yong exchanged views with his American counterpart John Bolton on ways to further enhance trilateral cooperation with Japan. The presidential office called the South Korea-U.S. alliance a great tree with deep roots that stretches back 66 years, and its view on alliance unchanged, that it stands strong and that it will not be shaken by the issue of GSOMIA. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
As Japan's second round of trade curbs against South Korea took effect, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga has once again emphasized that Tokyo's decision to remove Seoul from its whitelist is to practice proper export management, not to impose economic retaliations over historical issues. But quite ironically, he also called on Seoul to address the compensation issue of Japan's wartime forced labor in a wise manner, saying it's the biggest problem that's in the way of the two countries. He added that the Japanese government is determined to urge Seoul to resolve any violations of international law caused by South Korea's Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the South Korean victims last year. South Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry has echoed the Blue House, expressing grave concerns and regret over Tokyo's removal of Seoul from its trade whitelist. The ministry urged Tokyo to come to the table for talks to resolve the issue diplomatically. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Lee Ji-won, has more.
South Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry has lodged an official complaint against Japan for its decision to go ahead with taking Seoul off its whitelist of countries with preferential trade measures. The ministry on Wednesday said First Vice Minister Cho Se-young summoned the Japanese ambassador to South Korea, Yasumasa Nagamine, earlier in the morning to protest against Tokyo's decision. Cho emphasized his grave concerns on how the decision came, despite Seoul's efforts to solve the issue diplomatically. He also made it clear how Japan's trade restrictions on South Korea came not due to what Japan calls security issues, but because of the forced labor ruling, where Seoul's Supreme Court ordered Japanese firms to compensate Koreans forced to work for them during Japan's colonial rule. Cho said it is a clear economic retaliation that threatens the basis of Seoul-Tokyo ties. While urging Tokyo to withdraw its unfair trade curbs, the vice minister strongly urged Japan to sincerely come out for talks to seek an appropriate solution to the issue. To this, Nagamine simply reiterated Japan's stance and said that he will deliver Seoul's concerns back to Tokyo. Seoul's foreign ministry spokesperson also reiterated such concerns and regret through a statement. In strong words, he said he cannot but deplore that Japan carried out the trade curbs that would negatively affect their economic cooperation, as well as the world's free trade order and regional co-prosperity. He then pointed out how Japan's unreasonable excuses and decision to ignore South Korea's request for talks does not help solve the situation. The spokesperson then said the foreign ministry urges Japanese government officials to be careful with their words so as not to hamper efforts to discuss and solve this issue. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Seoul's Director General for Asian and Pacific Affairs, Kim Jong-han, is to meet with his Japanese counterpart Kenji Kanasugi tomorrow to discuss pending issues between the two sides, including Japan's trade restrictions on Seoul. While this is a regular meeting both sides have once every few months, it comes at a critical time when bilateral tensions are high. The two diplomats will have a closed-door luncheon followed by their sit-down. After that, Kanasugi is also to have a meeting with his other counterpart on nuclear negotiations, Lee Do-hoon. The government has laid out plans to try and stabilise supplies for Korean industries to help local firms become more innovative and more self-sufficient. Kim Min-ji has the details.
South Korea will invest more than $4 billion over 3 years starting 2020 in the local parts, materials and equipment sectors. Announced Wednesday, the latest plan is aimed at boosting the competitiveness of those industries, while at the same time stabilizing supply channels as the country seeks to reduce its dependency on Japan for key materials.
We will foster our parts, materials and equipment industries regardless of Japan's actions. We will be investing over $4 billion for R&D alone over the next 3 years. We will also step up studies required to foster an R&D ecosystem and maximize achievements. Through these efforts, we will most certainly reduce dependence on specific countries in all sectors.
The government plans to complete its selection of 100 key strategic items that are heavily reliant on Japan or need to develop homegrown technology for R&D projects by the end of this year. They will receive customized support according to their level of technology and the potential for finding alternative sources of imports. In addition, the government will swiftly implement R&D projects worth over $1.5 billion that have been waived of government preliminary feasibility tests. The government will also create a special committee to oversee R&D activities and policies.
It has become an opportunity to recognize the importance of boosting the localization of key parts, materials, and equipment within the global supply chain.
While the government said there has been no direct damage as of yet, it vowed to keep close tabs on the impact that Japan's trade retaliation has on local industries and draw up further measures accordingly. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in says Korea needs to protect its economy, especially in the face of uncertain trade conditions. Here's the president earlier today.
어려운 시기에 유망한 기업들의 국내 유턴은 우리 경제에 희망을 줍니다. 앞으로도 정부는 국내 복귀를 위해 투자하는 기업들에게 아낌없는 지지와 응원을 보낼 것입니다.
The president was visiting Hyundai Mobis's auto parts factory in Ulsan, where he said the firm is the first Korean conglomerate to bring its business back from abroad, leading to more jobs. Moon added that now is a crucial time to bring back investment to help Korea become the world's fourth largest manufacturer. Hyundai Mobis announced it will invest nearly $250 million in an electric vehicle parts plant in the country by early 2021. Hundreds of Japanese people have taken to the streets of Tokyo to demand the Abe government renounce its removal of South Korea from its so-called whitelist. A Japanese civic group on Tuesday gathered in front of Prime Minister Abe's official residence, expressing their deep opposition to Tokyo's trade restrictions on South Korean companies. They also slammed his lack of remorse on sensitive historical issues, including Japan's wartime atrocities, calling on the Japanese government to face up to its past wrongdoings. Signs at the rally read "No Abe" and called on the Japanese leader to stop using economic methods as a means of retaliation over historical disputes. After South Korea's decision to scrap the Military Information Sharing Pact with Japan, also known as GSOMIA, the US is continuing to express concern over not only its decision, but also over the military drill around Dokdo Island. Kim Bo-kyung has the details.
According to AFP, a senior U.S. official says the decision to quit GSOMIA will help China and potentially weaken the allies' ability to respond to North Korea. But in the official's view, the row between South Korea and Japan is related to the two countries' leaders and has nothing to do with the U.S. It's an indication the U.S. would like Seoul to stick with GSOMIA, something apparently not out of the question. On Tuesday, South Korea's prime minister said there's about 3 months left until the pact officially ends and that Seoul could reconsider its decision if Japan takes back its unfair trade measures. U.S. has taken issue with other actions by South Korea as well. According to Yonhap News Agency, an anonymous official at the State Department referred to South Korea's recent military drills to defend its territory in the East Sea, including Dokdo, calling them unproductive given their timing and scale. Still, the official said Washington does not have a particular position on the Dokdo issue and urged Seoul and Tokyo to resolve it peacefully. Earlier this week, South Korea held the largest ever military exercise to defend its territories in the East Sea. In response, Japan demanded Seoul to suspend the drills, again falsely claiming sovereignty over Tokyo. Meanwhile, a government source says Seoul's foreign ministry on Wednesday summoned the U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Harry Harris, to again explain its stance that the decision on GSOMIA was made because of a bilateral dispute with Japan that Tokyo started. The ministry reportedly emphasized that the decision is not intended to negatively impact its ties with Washington. Harris was also reportedly told of the reasons behind the East Sea military drills. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In other news, latest data shows South Korea's total fertility rate, defined as the number of children that would be born to each woman if she were to live to the end of her childbearing years, fell to a record low last year. Kim Il-sung reports.
South Korea's total fertility rate fell to 0.98 in 2018. With a rate of 1.17 in 2016, it was already the lowest in the OECD. Now it is the only country in the OECD that has a total fertility rate below 1, much lower than the OECD average of 1.68. Statistics Korea attributed the decline in childbirths to the falling number of marriages and the falling number of women aged between 30 and 34, which dropped 5% on year in 2018. Another reason for fewer babies is that more people are starting their families later, which raises the age at which women give birth. The average age that Korean women gave birth in 2018 was 32.8 years, 2 years older than the average age a decade ago. According to Statistics Korea, more babies were born to mothers in their late 30s than those in their late 20s. After hitting 4.5 in 1971, Korea's total fertility rate has been in continuous decline. The number of babies born last year fell near 9% on year to around 327,000, following declines of 12% and 7% in the 2 previous years. The falling fertility rate comes despite the Korean government's efforts to tackle the problem by spending over $80 billion over the last decade to try to increase the fertility rate, including subsidized childcare leave, free nurseries, and cash stipends.
The lower fertility rate hurts potential economic growth as production and consumption falls. It also has a negative effect on employment and could lead to a pension shortfall problem. Raising the overall quality of life and improving the work-life balance is ultimately the key to stopping the fall in fertility rate.
A fertility rate of 2.1 is considered the replacement rate that is needed to keep the country's population level stable at around 50 million people. But according to Statistics Korea, the fertility rate is expected to continue to fall through 2021. Kim Il-sung, Arirang News.
Major South Korean businesses cut their investment in the first half of this year by $9 billion. According to industry tracker CEO Score, the main factor was the slump in the global semiconductor and display industries. Of the 353 businesses surveyed, investments in the first half totaled $30.3 billion, an on-year decrease of 23%. Making the biggest cuts were Samsung Electronics, SK Hynix and LG Display. But in telecoms, there was an increase in investment by companies such as KT and SK Telecom with the rollout of their respective 5G networks. South Korean defense firm Hanwha Systems says it has signed a deal with the Philippines Defense Department to export a key processor for warships. In a deal worth about $25 million, the firm will provide the processor to 3 Filipino warships. Similar to a central processing unit in computers, this processor connects all other networking systems of a warship. Hanwha Systems is also exporting other high-tech equipment for such vessels. It says it plans to increase overseas sales. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is blaming what he's calling North Korea's rogue behavior for stalling the nuclear negotiations. And at the UN Security Council, Britain, France and Germany have also condemned the regime for its recent missile launches, the second time they've done so in less than a month. Lee Seung-jae reports.
In a speech at the National Convention of the American Legion in Indianapolis on Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo hit out at North Korea's rogue behavior amid stalled talks on dismantling the regime's nuclear weapons program. While Pompeo stressed that the U.S. has galvanized global support to denuclearize North Korea, he stopped short of mentioning the international sanctions that are on the regime. The talks have stalled since the two sides failed to agree to Washington's demands for complete denuclearization and Pyongyang's demands for sanctions relief during the second Trump-Kim summit in Hanoi earlier this year. Last week, North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho slammed Pompeo, calling him the die-hard toxin of U.S. diplomacy, and adding the U.S. would be sadly mistaken if it planned to maintain sanctions on the North. Despite the verbal tit-for-tat, Washington has continued to express hope that Pyongyang will return to the negotiating table in line with a June 30th agreement between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. In New York on Tuesday, Britain, France, and Germany condemned North Korea's recent missile launches in a statement issued after a closed-door session of the UN Security Council. The three countries were referring to the regime's 7 rounds of missile tests since late July. It's the second time the countries have condemned the North in less than a month. The statement urges Pyongyang to engage in meaningful negotiations with the U.S., adding that international sanctions must remain in place and be fully and strictly enforced until North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs are dismantled. The U.S. did not sign to either of the statements, possibly in a bid to avoid any action that could hurt efforts to resume denuclearization talks with the regime. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North is concerned over signs that suggest the North is continuing to produce highly enriched uranium for nuclear weapons. Based on commercial satellite images, 38 North explained Wednesday that an additional accumulation of waste has been witnessed from the Pyeongsan uranium mine and concentration plant since 2017. It also said the facility, which is the regime's largest uranium mine and concentration plant, has been operating through late May to support the North's ongoing nuclear program. The South Korean government is analyzing seawater after recent reports that a North Korean uranium factory might have leaked waste into the West Sea. A spokesman for Seoul's Unification Ministry said today that they're analyzing water collected last week near the inter-Korean sea border. Earlier this month, based on satellite images, Radio Free Asia reported that a uranium concentration plant in Pyeongsan in North Korea could be leaking. Another news outlet, 38 North, also recently said that the reports of leaks from the site are accurate. Results of the tests will take 2 weeks to come out, but the spokesman noted that Pyeongsan has only uranium mines and a refining plant, citing experts who say those are unlikely to produce radioactive waste that could be harmful to humans. The director of the U.S. Missile Defense Agency has expressed serious concerns about missile proliferation, labeling North Korea as a potential enemy. Vice Admiral John Hill, in a report earlier this month, pointed to Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea and their missile programs. He said North Korea has been selling missile-related items to numerous countries, calling the regime a significant proliferation threat. Admiral Hill stressed the need to sustain and expand the U.S. missile defense system in order to stay ahead of offensive capabilities. According to the Middlebury Institute's Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, North Korea has conducted 128 missile tests since 1984, 97 of which were carried out under Kim Jong-un. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, global experts have gathered to discuss ways to achieve peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula. Before tomorrow's official forum, they visited the demilitarized zone and the joint security area. Our Kan Young-woo tells us their takes on the peace process in Korea.
Often known as a living relic of the Korean War, the DMZ is a place that draws fascination and solemnity. And a group of global experts on Wednesday got to see one of the most elusive sights at the inter-Korean border, a North Korean soldier. They were visiting the demilitarized zone and the JSA ahead of Thursday's global forum on bringing peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula.
Much progress has been made between the two Koreas since last year. But it's crucial for us to spread the importance of the peace economy internationally. To do that, we need to deliver our message through the global network and make sure we have a consensus with the world.
Although inter-Korean talks are stalled, some experts say perseverance is key in peace-building process.
Of course, this has been a very long process, and I think that we have to recognize that it will take a long time for this to happen. But the sort of trust-building measures that the current government in Seoul is engaging in, I do believe is very, very important.
Conversely, other experts say it's time for two Koreas to resume talks.
So there are many, many countries represented here in this group today. So I hope it could be a combined effort. I think Seoul and Washington will have to work very closely together. But we need to get talks started. You know, those rooms over there that we visit, they were actually there to have talks. Whether the talks are in Panmunjom or in Pyongyang or in Seoul or wherever they are, they need to start. That would be.
The group visited a number of other landmark places within the DMZ, including the Freedom House and the Peace House, as well as the Blue Bridge where the two leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang met last year. Ahead of the Global Forum on the Korean Peace Economy, experts from all around the world visited the line that divides the peninsula. They saw how close, yet how far apart the two Koreas are. Kanyong-woo, Arirang News.
For the first time in 8 years, Hyundai Motor has reached a provisional agreement with its labor union on wages without workers staging a strike. They reached a deal on Tuesday, the last day of bargaining, amid criticism that a strike at this time would affect the brand's image. Union workers said they postponed a planned strike in order to focus on overcoming social isolation by considering uncertain political and economic conditions driven by Japan's export curbs on South Korea. The United States has approved the sale of 31 Mk-54 anti-submarine torpedoes to South Korea at a cost of $72 million. According to the U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency, the deal includes accessories such as containers and test equipment. It explained the South Korean Navy will carry the torpedoes on its P-8A aircraft. And for Japan, the U.S. has approved the sale of 73 ship-based missiles. These are the SM-3 Block 2A missiles at a price of $3.3 billion. South Korean tennis player Chung Hyun has won his first round match at the final Grand Slam tournament of the year. He rallied from a first-set loss to beat American Ernesto Escobedo by 3-2 at the US Open men's single tournament in New York on Tuesday. This is the third consecutive year he has reached the second round of the US Open. The 23-year-old will take on Spaniard Fernando Verdasco in the next round. Free tickets for the 100th Korea National Sports Festival in Seoul will be available from 8 p.m. Thursday Korea time. Tickets for 10,000 seats can be booked exclusively through social commerce site We Make Price on a first-come, first-served basis until September 3rd. The remaining batch of tickets will be available 2 days after. Each person can only book up to 2 tickets. Over 30,000 athletes from all over the country, as well as several overseas Korean groups, will be participating in the week-long event, which will be held in early October. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It's now time to take a look at some of Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of Koreator, where foreigners share their love for Korea.
Hello everyone, my name is Lady.
Hi, I'm Raymond. Hi, I'm Christian.
We are here right now to make some reaction videos about Misora.
Hi guys, 여러분 안녕하세요. Welcome back to Korean with Misora, where we take K-pop songs to learn Korean words. Let's go. 안녕하세요. Welcome back to Korean with Misora, where we take K-pop songs to learn Korean words. 화나다, 환하다. It's adjective.
환하다.
Make it shorter.
One. One. Canada. So this is a part of
Korean language, actually.
Oh. I used to hear a lot of that adjective, and this is the meaning. Now I know.
Wanhada.
Has a really
This is interesting.
when someone has a really bright smile or a bright
Smile.
Right? Okay.
Bright smile. Bright personality.
their expression is
I love her English.
Actually, she's better than us.
Yes, even though we're Filipino. We used to study English. Oh, they use a lot of that word in their songs.
Yes.
대표는 얼굴도 환하고 노래도 잘하고 아주 완벽해. 자, 환하게 웃을 때 완전 빛이 나. 나처럼 환해져.
It's so nice.
여러분, 너무 환해서 볼 수가 없어요. You guys are so bright. Good looking bright. So I see you next time. Please take care. Bye-bye.
It's so easy to catch up the way she taught us about that word, the way they use it, to use it in people. It's nice.
How about you?
All I can say is like it's very interesting. This is an eye-catching video because of the content. They used famous videos of Korean groups, so many people will have an interest to watch until the end. Worth watching.
Okay, well, very sad, both of you. But for me, I love the way she speaks it in Korean language that everybody can easily understand. Our video will be end here. You also guys can be a creator for A+, and bye-bye. See you next time. Bye-bye.
The nation is getting frequent rain as we head from summer into fall.
Let's get more details from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now today, what was supposed to be the rain-free day, but the central region has seen some sporadic showers due to the instability in the atmosphere. Now tomorrow, the rain clouds will form over the upper parts of the country as well, bringing a lot more rain than today. And on Jeju Island, where it's been raining for 4 consecutive days, 120 millimeters more rain is expected until tomorrow. And from the morning throughout the whole day, the central region, including the capital, will receive between 10 and 40 millimeters of rain. The rainy day will lower the mercury a few more notches throughout the night, and Seoul will be kicking off to 22 degrees Celsius tomorrow and pretty much similar elsewhere. And our daily highs will be on the cooler side as well. Seoul, Daejeon, and Daegu will be topping out to 28 degrees Celsius and Busan to 25 and Jeju at 26 degrees. After the rain, a mild weekend is in the forecast, so it will be nice to plan an outing. But make sure you carry an extra layer of clothes to keep you warm into the evening hours. And next week, the southern regions are expected to receive another round of autumn rain. Now I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.